Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Laura and I have been eating a meat-based carnivore diet for the last 4 years. And when you think about eating only meat, sometimes people think that sounds really boring. But one of the things that has made this sustainable for me for the last 4 years is the fact that I use a lot of different salts and seasonings. I definitely consider myself a salt snob. I like different textures of salts for different types of meat and in different circumstances. You guys know I travel with my little salt tower and I bring those things with me everywhere I go because I'm really picky about the types of salt that I like to have on my meat. I am finally going to do a video where I explain all of that. So I'm going to go through all my different kinds of salts and why I like them with different types of meats. And then we're actually going to go through my spice cabinet. Some of these things are really clean, things I've been using all along throughout this journey. And then I have some other blends that I'll kind of explain why you may not want to be using them and why you personally might want to avoid them. Before we get started, I want to let you know that this video is sponsored by Element. Element is an electrolyte drink mix perfectly formulated for anyone on a low-carb, keto, or carnivore diet. Each one of these packets contains 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. Element can help prevent and eliminate headaches, muscle cramps, fatigue, sleepiness, and other common symptoms of electrolyte deficiency. When I'm fasting and not getting proper electrolytes, I can get headaches or wake up with those crazy foot cramps. And the Element packets can replenish that through these convenient packets that I can take with me anywhere. I like the unflavored versions, which are literally just magnesium, sodium, and potassium. They also have a variety of flavors like raspberry orange. My husband is loving the chocolate one, or the habanero lemon. They're sweetened with stevia and they contain no coloring, artificial ingredients, gluten fillers, or any of the junk that you don't want. Right now, Element is offering my subscribers a sample packet free with any order. That's 8 single serving packets free with any Element order, and this is a great way for you to try all 8 flavors. You can get yours at drinkelement.com/LAURAESPATH. This deal is only available through my link, and so you must go to drinklmnt.com/LAURAESPATH. All right, let's talk about salt. I'm going to talk through all my favorite salts first. And so if you are a purist and you season your meat with salt only and you don't want to hear about all the scandalous, controversial seasoning blends, then you can just watch the first part of this video. I am big on appreciating a different texture of salt depending on the type of meat that I'm eating. And so that's why you see a lot of variety. It's just kind of what I have come to love over the years. When you're eating a carnivore or keto low carb diet, you need a lot of salt to kind of replenish those electrolytes. And so it started as a supplementation tool. It's really just turned into a taste tool. I don't eat anything sweet, and so I'm looking for a really good salty flavor. And by using a variety of salts, I can add a lot of variety to my meat when it seems like I'm just eating meat all the time. I'm getting a tremendous amount of flavor variety by mixing up the textures and the types of salt that I'm using. So I'm going to talk you through the ones that I use. A lot of them are Redmonds. They just have a really good clean salt. I buy that from their website. Some of them you can find in stores. I will link down below like my Amazon salt list and spices. So anything that I'm talking about today, you should be able to find a link for in the description. I'm going to start with the finest grain of all salts, and that is the powdered salt. Sometimes in stores you can find like a popcorn salt or powder, something that is just giving me a really fine dust of salt. You can put this in your water and it's going to dissolve a lot easier, and it's not going to leave you with like chunky salt residue at the bottom. So I like it for that, but mainly I personally use this every week, putting it on my homemade jerky. It sticks really easily at the end. It's not gonna leave me with like this overwhelming salty flavor, but it just gives a really nice flavor. So I don't travel with this one, but I use it on a regular basis on top of any homemade jerky that I make. Next up is the Redmond traditional fine grain salt. This is gonna be the texture of salt you would find in any standard salt shaker. I use this on chicken wings several times a week. I put this on eggs. I will use this on just general cooking. If I'm making anything for the kids, this is what would go on it if I'm not wanting to add texture to it. Next up, I use the Redmond Coarse salt. This is a little bit larger of a grain of salt. It gives a little crunch. It is gonna dissolve, which I like, but sometimes you're gonna be left with a little crunch. I tend to add this the most often to pork belly if I'm frying up some chicharron pieces in the air fryer. And if I'm doing a steak in the cast iron, I want a chunkier, coarse salt, and I don't want any seasonings to burn in a cast iron. So a steak in a cast iron, I'm always gonna use this, what do they call it? Their ancient kosher sea salt. Next up, I need a really thick, flaky salt. I don't want it to break my teeth. I don't want it to use, like some brands have a grinder salt. This is a really huge, chunky salt, and it is intended to be ground up. If I tried to chew that, it would break a tooth or something. And so I'm looking for a flaky salt that I can put on top of meat that gives me a good crunch. We use this as our finishing salts, and this is that like really nice coarse salt. Anytime somebody watches one of my videos and you see me sprinkle the salt on at the end, it's gonna be something like this. I have tried a lot of different brands. I have used the expensive San Francisco sea salt, love, it's just expensive. I love the Maldon salt, which we know is very popular. That is also great, it's also expensive. The cheapest and yet the salt that's the cheapest, that gives me the texture that I'm looking for, is called Falk salt, and I buy this on Amazon in a box. I actually then saved an old container and I refilled the container with it. None of this stuff is necessary. You can use your own random salt that you find. We have just found that this is what makes this lifestyle a full experience for us. That's why we eat on cutting board plates, and having these meals that are meat end up being this really fun experience for us. Chris ends up using a smoked salt. He's been on a smoked salt kick. I have tried many different brands of this. Right now he's using the Redmond's Chef's salt, and so that's pretty much his go-to. So on our dining room table, we keep a little pinch pot of the flaky salt, the Falk salt, and this is what I sprinkle on top of my meals at the end of, before I start eating every meal. And then Chris has a little pinch pot of smoked salt, and we keep, especially because guests are coming over and stuff. I have a little spoon around here somewhere. Where's my spoon? Okay, yeah. We keep a little spoon in these, and so it's kind of fun to then keep these, rather than doing salt and pepper, we just put that on there. So this is a good way to finish your steak. This would be an awesome way, especially if you don't have a smoker, you add a little bit of smoked salt to your steak. If you're cooking it indoors somewhere or you don't have a grill flavor, it adds so much flavor in just a tiny bit of salt. So that's kind of a fun way to really give yourself a different experience on the same kind of meat that you're eating every single day. Butter is a whole other conversation, but adding some butter to the top of it. You can try lots of different flavors of butter as well. So that's kind of the experience. You know what? I'm gonna linked on my Amazon list in the description is there's a variety pack of little mini smoked salts and then also some spicy salts. Those were a really fun stocking stuffer that I gave to my mom and Chris last year, and you get 6 little smoked salts or the spicy version in a little pack that I put in their stockings, and then they kind of got to test and try things out over the years. We have tried, any kind of fancy brand of salt that you can find, and really just have found what we like best. I take the Redmond packets and obviously a lot of the little mini Redmond salts with me when I travel, and then I can just refill them with all of my favorite salts, and then I use my tower to bring this crunchy salt. If I'm gonna order a steak in a restaurant, I really want this nice coarse crunchy salt finished at the end. Lastly, over the years, we have used a lot of this thick Brazilian coarse salt. I get this on Amazon. When we go to Fogo de Chao, which is the Brazilian steakhouse, all you can eat meat, we ask them to bring us a little tiny dish of their coarse salt that they use to season the meat with. And that's kind of how we realized we loved this really crunchy salt on top of our meat that kind of melts a little bit, is we went to Fogo de Chao many years ago and had asked them for some extra salt, and they brought us that really big coarse salt. I looked all over the internet to try to find something that was gonna give me that coarse ground salt crunch. Go through bags and bags of this. I think recently we've transitioned to more of the flaky salt, but this really crunchy salt gives you just a lot of nice texture when you're eating your meat. And it's very traditional Brazilian. This company is Brazilian also. And if you want that same experience, then you can use the crunchy salt as well. I think think that's all I have from the salt content. Let me clear all this away, and I'm gonna bring out all of my seasonings, and I'll explain, you know, which ones you might want to avoid depending on your goals and which ones are my absolute favorites. Okay, don't worry, I'm not gonna go through these individually. The concept of this is to really share, like, first of all, this is my spice cabinet, stuff that I use often. Every single one of these is open and I use them, and I still consider myself a carnivore. So like how you do a carnivore diet and what spices you add is really up to you and your goals. For me personally, with where I'm at, these things are all fine. I have spent a short period of time doing meat and salt only, but that didn't last very long for me. It's just not interesting. So the majority of the time when I'm just seasoning a traditional steak, I am using smoked paprika and this adobo. You guys see it in every single one of my videos. I buy these giant things in bulk, but you can find, you know, some version of this at your local grocery store. And that to me is just what gives a nice variety of flavor to what I'm eating and just makes it interesting for me. So like the entire 4 years that I've been doing carnivore, like this has been a part of it for me. After that, when I find a seasoning blend, I'm looking for the ingredients. I'm looking to see if like sugar is the #1 ingredient. When I first went carnivore, I had to clean out my spice cabinet to find things that had a lot of carbs and a lot of sugars. If you're looking at spice, steak, barbecue blends, and sugar is listed as the #1 ingredient or the #2 ingredient, those were not okay for me. That's kind of the interesting thing about seasoning blends, is that based on the volume that's in the container, they have to be listed first. So if sugar is listed first, then it is the #1 largest volume ingredient in that blend. So brown sugar, for instance, on steak rubs is very common as the first ingredient because most of that container is gonna be brown sugar. If I have several things up here do have sugar listed as an ingredient, but it's like the 7th or 8th ingredient and there's also no carbs in it, for me, that's not something that I'm worried about. That minute amount of sugar in a seasoning blend that's listed as one of the later ingredients and there's no carbs, that is gonna have no impact on my blood sugar, no impact on my ketones, and no negative impact on my health whatsoever. The #1 reason why you might wanna stay away from spices in general is because of autoimmune conditions or digestive issues. I would suggest spending some time being simple, sticking with salts or very simple seasonings to see how things affect you. There are gonna be people who instantly have a lot of problems with what's up here because of oxalates or because of other plant toxins that might be included in some things that are up here. That might be relevant for some people depending on their autoimmune conditions, their gut responses. Some of these taco seasoning blends, like definitely might, if I eat them too often, I might start having some digestive issues. So how often you're eating these things and how much you're using definitely matters. Another ingredient that I am looking personally to avoid is monosodium glutamate, which is MSG. I tend to find that I swell, my fingers get tight, I just feel like I'm retaining water. I could gain 5 pounds just by having a bunch of MSG. I would suggest keeping things very simple as you're trying spices. This is all very, trying things one at a time. If you are concerned about blends, things that are added into a lot of these blends, then I would just stick to like very simple ingredients. This is onion, oregano, cumin. I have this variety of spices right here because I tend to make my own taco seasoning most of the time. The kids eat taco meat a lot. I like my own homemade taco seasoning. I will link down below the blog that I get my taco seasoning recipe from. Just kind of buy these seasonings and mix them up. It's way cheaper than the packets, and something like this packet in it is going to have cornstarch, and this one actually isn't that bad. It's probably the best of the worst, which is why I have it. We were having somebody watch the kids and I was trying to give them an easy way to make it, but this one still has cornstarch in it, but a lot of the packets are gonna have a lot worse ingredients. Another ingredient that is in a couple of these seasoning blends that would receive criticism and that you personally might want to watch out for, depending on how you feel about it, is any type of seed oil. I don't like seed oils. We don't cook with them in our house. I don't consume volumes of them. I try to avoid them when I go to certain restaurants. I choose restaurants that I prioritize restaurants that don't use seed oils. Sometimes I end up there and I'm fine with it. For me, the poison is in the dosage. It's not about having this droplet of a seed oil that's in a spice blend. For me, it's about not cooking with it on a regular basis, not eating things fried with it on a regular basis. So for me, the poison is in the dosage. If you really want to hear my rant on the panic around seed oils, you can go check out our Cutting Against the Grain episode where Judy and I do a deep dive into it. Yes, seed oils are bad, but one of my favorite seasoning blends, because I just love the flavor of it and what it provides for me, is Greek Freak seasoning from Spiceology. They sell it in these small jars. I buy it in these giant jars just simply because we use so much of it in our house. The very last ingredient on here is sunflower oil. My guess is one of the seeds or spices in here is roasted in some kind of sunflower oil, or it's used as an anti-caking agent. They don't include other things, right? The ingredients in this are rosemary, basil, oregano, black pepper, sea salt, garlic, onion, orange peel, tomato, chili pepper, natural yeast extract, parsley, and sunflower oil. The amount of sunflower oil that is in this entire container is minuscule. The amount of seasoning that I put on my chicken that I eat maybe once a week is also minuscule. I am personally not concerned about the seed oil being listed as the last ingredient on this. It might be something that you need to be aware of. Some of the other brands that I use, I really enjoy this Kinder the Blend seasoning. We use this a lot for smoking, and it is sea salt, dehydrated garlic, black pepper, and sunflower oil is listed as the last ingredient. Again, I am not concerned about this. If you are concerned, don't use it. That's definitely a personal preference. But because I'm not coating my meat in seed oils, canola oils, corn oils, sunflower oils, all those, toxic oils, because I'm not coating my meat in it, I'm not frying my food in it daily, I'm not cooking with it, I am not concerned about this being the last ingredient. If you are looking for something that's going to be very clean, here are the couple things that I mentioned. So we'll start with the cleanest. You can use a lot of Redmonds. They have onion salt, garlic salt. They have a really great seasoned salt. Their seasoned salt is going to be much more clean than a traditional Lawry's seasoned salt. A Lawry's, this is actually just a really old one we have still in the back of the pantry, but it has salt. Sugar is listed as the second ingredient, and then it's also going to have cornstarch in it. So if you're wanting something that's a seasoned salt that you would want to use on burgers or just your general food items, Redmond's has a much cleaner version than that. Another brand that I love and buy a lot for the kids is the Flavor God seasoning. They have some that contain a lot of sugar in them, so you definitely have to make sure you're looking at the ingredients, but I use their taco seasoning blend sometimes if I'm lazy and haven't made my own. Penelope really loves their ranch seasoning, and Nathaniel is obsessed with the pizza seasoning. If you watch my Instagram stories, you can see he'll lick this off of the plate when he's done eating it. So Flavor God is a clean brand. You just have to watch because they'll have donut seasoning and things like that. So just be aware of the types that you're personally buying. Another brand of, another company of seasoning lines that I love is the Spice House. They have some really awesome blends. I had seen their ad online for the shawarma seasoning and got suckered into buying it. And then I just kind of grabbed a bunch of other things as well. And their blends are very clean. They don't contain fillers. They don't contain caking agents. They do have some sugar or honey powder listed as one of the ingredients, so you have to decide what you're comfortable with. For example, the Chipotle garlic barbecue blend has salt, spices, chipotle, paprika, garlic, green onion, parsley. So that one is not going to contain any sugar, while something else has sugar listed as a much later ingredient. But I'm a big fan of the flavor and the quality that I get from the Spice House seasonings. They also sell you packets, so you can try a lot smaller volume for a lot cheaper. Cosmo Q is a brand of seasonings that are traditional barbecue seasonings, but they offer a clean, no sugar line. And that's something that we've been trying recently. Chris has already finished the Southern Chicken entire bottle. He's been using this on wings, on chicken thighs on a regular basis. They also have several good tacos blends as well. If you're wanting to avoid kind of the junk that's in some of the packets, then you can grab their taco seasoning brand. But I really love the variety that you're gonna get. This has a lot of flavor in it without containing a lot of junk. So this is garlic seasoning, and it just has sea salt, garlic, black pepper, sage, and thyme. And that's a delicious one as well. The next two brands that I'm going to show you are probably a little more controversial than anything else that I've shown. This stuff is a lot cleaner. This is just what I like and what works well for me. I really love the brand Hardcore Carnivore. You see me wear all their shirts all the time. I buy their stickers and I buy their seasoning blends. These are not associated with the carnivore diet. They were just founded by a woman. It's a great small business that I love to support. You can find their spices in some specialty barbecue shops, and then also I just personally buy it online. But I'm a fan of supporting their small business. Some of the ingredients in here you'll want to take a look at. One of my favorites you see me use all the time is the Michelada Seasoning. It has spices, salt, citric acid, brown sugar is listed, lime powder, and dehydrated garlic. It has 1 carb per 2 grams. So I'm using this, maybe I'm using a tablespoon of this on my chicken wings once a week. To me, that amount of sugar is really not going to negatively affect me. If you were using this every single day, I would probably say like that's not what's holding you back if that's an issue, but that would be an example of something that you could cut out. I'm just a big fan. These have tons of flavor. If you like pepper, their Hardcore Carnivore Black is a really nice, pepper-based steak seasoning that's just adds so much flavor. So if you don't know how to cook meat also, using some different seasoning blends is just a really great way to kind of like enhance the flavor of what you're eating. Another brand that probably I'm going to get some comments about below is the Kinder Seasoning. You can find a lot of these at Walmart's, Costco's. We use the blend on any type of big, when we made that brisket a few weeks ago, we used the blend on that. I love the taco blend. They have a really good, tequila lime. That's a good one. And then they have a wood-fired garlic seasoning as well. So if you're concerned about some of those ingredients, just be aware. I'm not. This, to me, is what keeps this life sustainable. You don't have to use any of these seasonings. The salts that I showed you give variety, and we stuck with that for a long time. But at this point, I'm having fun. It's turned into this cooking hobby where I'm able to like try out different seasonings and use different recipes and coming up with my favorite Greek chicken versus spicy chicken versus, that's to me what makes this sustainable long term. And so while none of this is necessary, it's all just fun. Like this is about how do I have fun eating meat all the time and enjoying a lot of variety. And this is what that looks like for me. And it looks very different for anybody else. I personally would love to learn more about what spices and seasonings you guys include. I know a lot of people just stick to salt, and that's totally awesome. But if you're using other spices and companies, feel free to mention them in the comments below because I'd love to find new things that I can add to my spice cabinet. It's overflowing at this point, and I love it that way because it keeps it interesting and fun for me to experiment with. So I hope this was helpful, maybe gave you some ideas. If you are, struggling, reducing the amount of spices and seasonings that you're using is always a great way to try to heal your gut and feel better. But once you're in this place where you feel great and you really just want to like play around with some spice settings, if you're getting bored with what you're eating, rather than falling off the wagon and going back to carbs or sugar or something else, like, hey, try mixing it up with some seasonings and see if that doesn't help this be more sustainable for you long term. For more exclusive content, behind the scenes, bonus footage, and all that great stuff, you can come find me on Locals. For anything else that I discussed today, check out the description below, and I will try to link everything I can and show you all of my favorite seasonings.